yet again, the Assembly has reinforced the need for dialogue between different people come from different places who are committed to tackling poverty, and by different places I don't mean different parts of the country, although we've obviously had people from all over. I mean people who are working in local authorities delivering services, or people who are in voluntary organisations who are campaigners or also delivering services, people from very grassroots organisations, people who are from no organisation who have got some experience of poverty, right up to in fact actually not right up to, including the politicians as well. It's demonstrated again the value in simply having the opportunity to have this kind of discussion, and it surprises me that it doesn't happen more often, but it doesn't, and so that's what makes this an important event. In terms of so the thing itself has been important. The kind of issues that we've discussed, the things that have struck me as important. Again, we've gone over issues around child poverty. Big problems emerging over the next five or so years around whether we make progress in child poverty. So lots of good ideas, I think, coming out around child poverty. Issues again around fuel poverty. I mean, these are all things that we knew we were going to talk about. But I guess themes running throughout the 2 days, welfare reform is huge. People are very, very concerned about that and very angry about it as well. In-work poverty, again, a theme that we didn't particularly target, but one that's quite clearly come through as being very important. But then I think the overall context to the discussion, and this is maybe something that's changed in the last 5 or 10 years, is that all of these discussions about individual policies, about different things that we could do to make things a little bit better, to ameliorate problems, they all take place within the context of inequality. People are very aware of that, of the notion that we can do lots of good things, but unless we tackle that overriding problem of continually widening economic inequality, then we're really not going to make the progress that we should.
I think the enduring value of the Assembly is the chance to hear from people who are experiencing poverty and hardship, and it's very easy to forget when you look at projections on the numbers of people in poverty now and in future, the statistics, to forget that we're talking about people who are often living on less than £10 a day. We heard that in the hall yesterday. And young mums like Leanne in North Glasgow, who despite everything are managing to try and make a better life for her daughter than she had. So these kind of human stories, which are often not part of the debate, certainly not in Parliament, is the real value of this event, that those come through. And although we heard some good and inspiring local projects which do protect people and do give people a chance to take some control over local circumstances, the abiding point for me is just the speed and scale of what we're entering into in terms of welfare reform and increased poverty. And I think that's reflected in not just the passion and the anger, but I think people were saying to politicians, your ideas, while they are helpful and good and practical, they're just not bold enough to deal with the changes we're living through. And rather than one more heave, so when growth comes back and employment rises, rather than repeating the last decade, people are saying at this event, not just activists, but some of the politicians too are saying we need actually different ways of thinking about the economy, different ways of linking that into long-term sustainability and breaking out of the form of growth we've been in. And that's a much bigger agenda. There are a few things we can do about that in Scotland in terms of powers. The most helpful thing we can do is recognise that's where we should be. It would make a world of difference if the Scottish Government was talking about a different type of economic growth than the one we have at the moment. A world of difference if we were talking about a robust anti-poverty strategy locally. It's not okay the local authorities can choose to do little or nothing on the National Child Poverty Strategy. So we need leadership and imagination, and that's not just at the Scottish level but local level as well.
And sorry, have you got something?
No, I was. And do you get a sense from the discussions that we've had today that we could move in Scotland in that direction, that we could get that kind of commitment from Scottish Government or from local government? I mean, we've had more or less all shades here over the last 2 days. Do you get a sense that, or even beyond this event, that we might move in that direction?
I think it's a really patchy landscape, and that some local authorities will want to use the powers they've got, even though they're constrained. Some of the messages and policies from Scottish Government are good and helpful longer term, but ultimately the kind of people who make up this assembly, the activists, the communities, I think are going to have to get to a point of realising that we can't just look to our politicians to provide that leadership. That people will have to somehow take control of assets, of decision-making processes. I spoke to a woman yesterday who said she'd given up on politics, but this year will stand as an independent candidate. That's a tiny way of saying to the system, maybe there's a different way of doing this. I don't know whether that's the answer or not, but I think the more people can create systems and networks for themselves, which aren't just relying upon enlightened representatives to get it right, the more hopeful I think we should be.
I think I'd recognise the same kind of themes coming through as well, that it's whilst we put the politicians up on the stage up here, we look to them, we hold them to account, as we should rightly do, but I increasingly get a sense that people say, well, actually they're not providing the answers for us. I spoke to one of the women from Dundee today. She's saying, I've heard the same things for 25 years. Politicians telling us the same thing for 25 years. And that's not to doubt the commitment, particularly in that last panel, that any of them have. But what it is saying is, I think, as you said, Jim, that the ideas don't match up to the rhetoric, the plans don't match up to the rhetoric, and people are increasingly frustrated with that and want to do things themselves. Whether that's standing as a politician or running your own community company or social enterprise, or just taking back a little bit of the power, a little bit of control yourself.
I think as a minimum it would help if we had a labour market policy that was about driving down poverty, if we had a local taxation system that was about driving down poverty, an education system that was about delivering for the lowest attaining 20%, that would be a commitment to use existing powers and budgets differently for different outcomes. So
the danger, I think, is that we grow so increasingly frustrated with mainstream politics and policy that we give up on it and fall back on our own resources or alleged community assets, whilst the reality is that those policies will still have a huge impact on the vast majority of people. So we do need to make sure that we keep a focus on them and don't simply ignore them because we're frustrated with the lack of change.
I would just add that we've talked about this previously, that when you look at where power lies in the economy, often it's very large businesses and those who represent them which have more power than our elected governments, parliaments. So whether we like it or not, I think we have to take this kind of debate to businesses and employers and start developing really practical things that they can do to be part of this, so that they are at least doing no harm over the next 10 years, and ideally putting in place the kind of shift to low carbon, socially just, low poverty society that all of these politicians want to see, in common with the activists who are here. But we now just need to make some practical decisions to start going in that direction.
We need to help them get there. I can see a theme for the 4th Assembly.